in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What's a pity? Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil's lurking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, could either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Hey, 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 hello, hello, hello. My name is Ike. Welcome to my channel. Let's get one thing out of the way. This is your opportunity to click that like button, okay? Click the subscribe button. Click the bell button twice. Share the video, okay? We are going to talk about a concept today that it's because of the real Dana. We're blaming her for inflicting this topic upon us. But
is it a blame or a good suggestion? Like,
yeah, we're doing it. We're doing it. It is happening. That speaks something in and of itself. So, ladies and gentlemen, we know the line, right? We know Bob Marley. Okay, get up, stand up. Another one of his infamous lines is, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery." Right? None but ourselves. We all know the line. Okay, so cool line, bro. But the idea is, what do people mean when they say that line, mental slavery? Do you use it? And what do you mean when you say it is the first question on the table. So let me just ask you that, Dana, okay? But you know what? Before I ask you, let me play a little bit of your words, okay? In your own words, something that you said just last week on Dr. Thunder's channel on this very topic of mental slavery.
oh, okay, that was his channel. Yeah.
Yes, yes, indeed. And let's see, I think around this time here, let's go.
The building, because of the mental enslavement that is constantly going on and being passed down to generation after generation, that we cannot get anywhere. So I feel as though going forward, we need to focus on the youth, building up the man in the youth, and the image, the positive image, was just the image period that needs to be presented will follow.
Oh, I have to point out a great irony that one of the many things that slaves were made to do was build. Very interesting. Like, they built the pyramids, they built the Great Wall of China.
Well, first of all, no slaves didn't build pyramids, so please don't say that.
Okay, so having to correct him on something that was not part of the point. Now this is just a total tangent. Okay, why did you do that? Did you do that, Dana?
What? Say that no slaves built the pyramids?
Yeah, because it's not relevant to the point of what.
Well, it wasn't relevant, and that's why I'm saying, like, why would he mentioned that? And I think that was too important. I think his point was slaves
build,
work the land and build, right? And then he just used that part of history as an example. However, I just wanted to do that correction because a lot of people, religious people, believe that it was slaves that built the pyramids under Egyptian law, and Moses came into freedom, and that's part of that religious mental mindset, that people, particularly Black people, still suffer from. But that is not true. Those people who built the pyramids were not enslaved. That is just a myth.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's continue to play this here. And by the way, last week we were talking about suits. We were talking about Black male image, and I think we were able to separate the Black male image from the Black male reputation. We say, hey, image is about branding, about presentation, but reputation is about behavioral expectations. What can one trust you to do? And then therefore certain outcomes become important in that regard. Then we started talking about, well, how do we get certain kinds of outcomes, and how do we get the reputation to change by changing certain behavioral things? And then Dana brought up the mental slavery. So that's so far where we're at.
Excuse me.
There was no
they
slaves
built
that built
the Great Wall of China.
pyramids.
Fair enough. They built the Great Wall of China, and they built a great many civilizations like Rome and stuff like that. So really, it seems like
so physically, you're talking about slaves from centuries ago. I'm in 2022, right? Where you're not physically enslaved, but it's that mental slavery that still keep you disenfranchised.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep it there for a second. Okay. Shout out to Ramil in the building. Okay, we got the real Dana in the house, and we got Ramil so far. Mind testing your audio, sir? Mind giving us a little holler?
Testing.
All right. We hear you. Okay, so I'm gonna ask this question. We're gonna get back to this question, and then we'll ask Ramil first, and then the real Dana. Right? Do you use the phrase mental slavery? And when you say it, what exactly do you mean when you say it? Ramil, and then the real Dana. Oh. Yeah, now you're muted.
Oh, okay. No, I don't use it anymore. No, because I'm not a slave. You know, that's only for the sheep. You know.
Okay, wait. When you say anymore, then you got to tell us when you used it. What did you mean when you were using it?
I mean, it was for describing other people, but since I don't care about them no more, you know, I know they're under mental slavery, but I'm not. So, you know, I mean, those type of people I can't even be around no more. So that's why I don't use it. You know.
Gotcha. And we'll dig into exactly what you mean still, even though you don't. It's a category you no longer care about. But we'll dig into exactly what is in there.
No, that's how I don't care. I just don't use it, because if I'm around them, the energy is gonna come off on me. You know what I mean? Like their mental slavery attitude is gonna rub off on me. So it's like, you know. Yeah, so that's why I'm mad with that.
What kinds of people are these people that you call mentally, you used to call or whatever, mentally enslaved?
People still in the matrix. People still, you know, believe in everything in front of their eyes. You know, people who still don't use critical thinking. You know, stuff like that. It just blows me now. So it's just like, you know.
Okay, so the average person.
Well, I don't want to say average, you know, but it's just because it's average people who are very intelligent too, you know. So
then they're not average. So here's what I mean, because here's what sometimes needs to happen. And this is not a big deal, but it's kind of interesting to point out, because if you kind of hang out around this YouTube streets a lot, you kind of forget what definition of average is. So people on YouTube, if we use IQ as some kind of a standard way of some number, right, to talk about average versus not, right, and it's relevant to what we're talking about, right? So people on YouTube are a little above average. Like what I mean by even the chat and all that kind of stuff. They're like 105, 110, maybe some 115. So even the dumbasses on YouTube, okay, that you may disagree or whatever, or even above average. So the average person really is they're very kind of cookie cutter. It's kind of what I'm saying, right? So you saying that when you say mental slavery, people in the matrix, blah blah blah. We'll question you later about the matrix you're in, but it's the average person more or less. Or would you say no, this is a special category of sheep?
I mean, so like I said, to me, I mean, just because you average don't mean you a sheep. I mean, there's people who work in regular everyday jobs who are not sheep. They just can't get themselves out of that situation. But people who don't have an open mind, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Dana, with the data, you brought us here with this mental slavery thing. You say mental slavery is not leading to certain outcomes. You see certain things that you don't like. You say, oh, it's related to certain cultural things, and you say it's mental slavery. When you use the term generally, what do you mean?
Yeah, well, I don't go around using the term mental slavery like some people going around using the N-word. It's just something that I know that still exists post-slavery here in America, and it's something that exists still throughout the world when it comes to Black people. And I'm making a correlation between Black people and white people, or Black people and other. Last week, Game Changer mentioned that I never met a slave, so I don't know what that's like or whatever. Now here in America, you wouldn't meet a slave because that was over 100 years ago. There's literally slavery going on right now in other countries throughout this world. Literally a slave, just like we were slaves here. However, he also asked me a question: how many people are, or maybe black people, but he said, how many people are mentally enslaved now? And I said a
Yeah,
lot.
he said Dana with the data. Where's the data
Right.
on mental slavery?
And I thought about that, and I said a lot, but how about the same amount of people? And this is my explanation, part of mental slavery. The amount of people, all the black people who voted for Biden, that's really the number of mental slavery when it comes to black people. So all the black people who voted for Biden, you suffer from mental slavery. So that would be the answer to his question. And that question was a little idiotic, but I mean, and my answer, which would answer his question, because in a broad spectrum, yeah, if you voted for Biden, you're under mental slavery as a black person. If you keep voting Democrat, you're mental slave. If you don't practice in politics, the science of politics, if you're not organized, if you're not trying to, build yourself up, you are suffering from mental slavery. There is a difference between the middle lower class and the top elites, to where they talk about business politics. Middle lower class talk about religion, praising God all the time, or take your booty to the pole. You subscribing to that, just distracted with nonsense. So, and that is a classism thing, because what are you doing to improve yourself?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me just ask Ramil real quick, right? Whether he would agree with how big you made the bucket. Because she just said, hey, you voted for a Democrat, you're black. Yeah, that group. All y'all over there.
That's part of it. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Like, just to give a broad example.
Yeah, shout out to I9 Bash, thank you very much for the $5.99 talking about that track. Yes, I got to get the track on there. I promise. Okay, but thank you very much. Always supporting. Now, Ramil, would you agree with what she just said about all the Democrats? Because I got some questions for you, Dana, with regards to like when you put sheep-like behavior, or when you say mental slavery is on anyways, on one side of things, it's like that's not how things typically work. But Ramil, what do you have to say about that?
I think the black men who vote for Democrats could probably be put in there, because I just don't see how you can be a full-grown man and be a liberal. That's my opinion. But as far as the sheep, I mean, the liberals pretty much agree with black women. They give them everything they want. So I think if they vote for liberal, they're probably voting in their best interests. You know what I mean? Even though it's against the collective interest, they get their own little trinkets. But I think black men who vote Democrat, you definitely are a fucking idiot.
Okay, now, is this something that is done to you in terms of, like, if I want to enslave a group of people, right, physically, okay, I gotta go there, gotta garrison these people, get them, lock them, put them in chains, physically move them, burn BTUs of energy and steam, and I gotta do stuff, okay? So what am I doing when I'm mentally enslaving somebody? Or I guess the question is this: is it from outside or is it from inside, right? Like, is there a committee of that is out there targeting and mentally enslaving black men, right? Does that exist, the real Dana? And then what do you have to think about? What do you have to say about that, Ramil?
I think it's more internally within us, in our community. When you look at the state of black people overall, it's like we want, and I say we, but not so much including myself, but in general, black people want the easy way out. They want something handed to them easily. Well, I deserve this, I need to have that, or welfare. Even though white people receive more welfare because there's more white people, but just a percentage in our 12.5% of the population, it is a good percentage of black people who are under welfare. And it's like, okay, what are you doing to push yourself up out of that? So it's more so internal. we're too distracted with drama, TikTok, and shaking your ass and competing against each other, just gender war, instead of just competing within yourself. So it is more of a interpersonal than it is me saying WS, i.e. white supremacy, but I say WS for the YouTube algorithm. Instead of always complaining and saying WS or white man holding me back. No, it's you. You want the easy way out. You don't focus on business or politics. You focus on basketball and football. What do you teach? What are you teaching your children? Are you present in your children's lives? Are you setting an example as a mother, a positive example for your children? Or are you co-signing this LGBTQ agenda?
Mm-hmm. So, because some might say, hey, putting it on the level of the individual might be, either not addressing the real problem, because maybe the problem is quote unquote
Let me
the
just
systemic
also
thing
say
that you
this.
said that you may say it's not true, but something more cultural, and that it's not about the individual choosing. But anyways, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say this one last thing. Because to me, it's more inward. So if you as an individual are mentally enslaved, that's what you're going to pass down to your children. And that's how it get passed down generation after generation. So if I'm in a community and the people around me are mentally enslaved, quote unquote, then that's what I'm used to, and like Ramil said, that is a type of energy him per se do not like to be around, recognizing it and removing yourself from that. A lot of people don't even recognize that they're mentally enslaved. So,
So Ramil, she said it's internal. You agree with that? Is there some kind of concerted effort externally to keep certain groups mentally enslaved?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's internal, and I don't care if people say it doesn't address the culture issue. I don't give a fuck about the culture. I don't care about black male image. I don't give a fuck about. I don't care about none of that. Only thing I care about is my individual circumstances and the people around me. You're gonna kill yourself trying to care about the collective and the culture. That if you can rise up, if the cream rise to the top. So, yeah, I think it's internal. You should worry about your individual internal battles and not try to save the world.
Well, I got to push back on something you just said, because yes, it does start internally, but you said don't worry about the collective. Well, I think that we should collectively be pushing for progress, but you can't collectively push for progress if you're not within yourself, enlightened, because every other group work collectively and they're getting positive results. When it comes to politics, when it comes to economic empowerment, when it comes to home ownership, business, being business owners, entrepreneurs, education, however, family structure, they work collectively.
No, they don't do that. What they do is every race is a small group of people in power, and they're smart enough to control the lower people who have no choice but to fall in line. The elite white people rent out apartments and property to the white masses. They employ the white masses, and the white masses are so broke they have no choice but to comply. So it seems like white people are helping white people. And same thing with the Asians.
But isn't that collectively working? Like now, as far as race, there is a collective, right? But even classism, that is collective. Because like you said, the elite white people, let's say the top 1%, they collectively work together to make sure they're staying in the top 1%.
It's not like, okay, so the 1% of America is 350 million. Let's just say that. That means 1% would be 3 million. I'm telling you right now, 3 million people are not working together collectively. They all have their own small cell groups that you contribute to society in their own different way. But to say we all work collectively implies that hundreds of thousands of us are going to get together and collectively agree. There's no group that does that. It's power. Because I think that's a dream that Black people have been sold that it's not possible. No, you're not going to get everybody on the same collective. You just have to go for yours with your cell group, which might be other Black people, you know what I'm saying? But I think that collective thing has been.
I think you're talking in too much of literal terms. Literally, 3 million people are not going to be a monolith or 100 people may not be a monolith, but what I'm saying is, when I say the top 1%, when we're talking about the Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos or whatever, the oligarchs and or whatever, those people, they do business with each other to stay in position of power. Yes, and then they create jobs for their people. There's always a scale as far as classism. Everybody's not going to be wealthy. Everybody's not going to be rich. You have to have the working class. However, even on a middle class or lower class, working class level, when we look at Black people, let's stick on just here in America, because I didn't get to Africa just yet, but let's just stick on here in America. There is no advancement. Like when you look at the family structure, when you look at, participating in the science of politics where you live at, everybody's just voting. Nobody is not organizing. And I'm talking about the middle class to the lower class. In your community, collectively, we're not working. So yeah, I'm not taking a big, large population throughout the United States. I'm talking about where you live at in your community. What are you doing to make it better? And you can't make it better if you within yourself are mentally enslaved. But you, Vermil, you're just saying collectively, you just worry about yourself. You're not.
Yeah, because other people, nobody's on the same frequency. Everybody has their own individual goals and their own individual agendas. I just think that you find a small group of people that you can vibe with and y'all go attack the world in which we all can do it. I'm just not worried about the Black collective or anything like that. Black people, and what you're talking about, how the way other races interact and do that stuff, I don't think we're capable of doing it. We've been here for 500 years. We've had a head start between everybody else. And we've had a 500-year head start on capitalism versus all these other groups, and we still can't get it right. It's just like time has proven what it is. So that's why I'm at with it,
Okay, time is proving where it is. That's where you're at with it. And I got something for the real Dana there with regards to this thing you guys are talking about right there. You're talking about from the outside, what seems to be a concerted effort among certain groups to get certain things done, right? Like these people come over here, they sell amongst themselves, they do these kinds of things, they own homes, and then they encourage this kinds of behavior. Last time Game Changer said, yeah, these things that you pass down, culture, such and such. Let me just put my 2 cents in as to Ramil is right in the sense that it is not a concerted effort, as you might think, as much of a concerted effort you might think. It is more of a basic understanding and trust, right? In the sense that if you have a group of people that you can trust because you guys have some kind of weird secret handshake, because, you're a freaking tribe, like let's say, talking about like the Igbos in Nigeria or something like that, or like the ADOS, like myself or something like that, or just you guys are freaking tribe, okay? So you guys know each other, have certain kinds of expectations, all kinds of trust, all kinds of stuff that lubricates the transaction. So it's just you guys are gonna gravitate towards each other. You guys are gonna want to do business with each other, even if you're not trying to. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And you guys are generally probably gonna be going into the same directions because of the way your parents told you to do. And you guys are gonna have certain attitudes towards things. But my question, I guess, to Dana is, without that trust, if that trust is not there, you can't impose it from above. It has to be actually there, no?
No, it does. And it's not there. That's part of mental slavery, to where it's so much damage that we do to each other or have done to each other that was done to us or whatever. We don't trust. How can I do business, let's say with Ramil, if he don't trust me and I don't trust him, And I mean, I understand, I get what he's saying. He has a small group that he deals with. But at the same time, let me just take that for example. How can you grow or expand just staying within that small group? Eventually, you are going to have to branch out your box of people. Not saying that, and it has to be a certain type. Like I said, there are the Black elites and the lower class. And it is different types of behavior between the two. But even within, let's say, the Black elites that do create jobs, that are doing things to advance in this country, it's very little of them, and it's not enough. And I'm wondering, is it because we are not supportive, and we intentionally always want to be the only one at the top? So I'm just saying, like, it's a different mindset. Just
go ahead, Ramil. It seems like you have something to say, Ramil.
I mean, if I'm a branch out, I'll just hire people. I'll just hire more people. I don't have to, I mean, within the group, I'm talking about those people within the group owning and controlling something. When it's time to branch out, you hire people, even if they're the lower class, and you scale up that way. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to make friends. I'm not trying to, like I said, that community, like somebody said in the chat, somebody said, no community advances by, like I said, I don't care about the community. The Black community is fucking over with. I mean, it's dead, it's done, it is a permanent underclass, and I've accepted that. So instead of trying to save it, I would see it for what it is, a labor force, right? Or the immigrants, because we have proven we can't own and control nothing. And it's not trying to be condescending, it's just we've been here for so long. We have the spending power, we have the capital, we have the money, all right, 1.6 trillion spending, but we have the capital. We just don't funnel it into things that provide an ROI. So I've recognized that, and that's why I don't care about the community. You give us money. I don't care about reparations. You give reparations, it's going to be done in 6 months.
I care about reparations all day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying. I think it would be it's not necessary because we wouldn't know what to do with it. Well, I'm not waiting on it. I put it like that. I just don't think that we don't have the. I don't know if we are intellectually capable of doing what you're talking about. Yes.
No, I agree. Like, we deserve it. We should get it. So I don't
know if we're intellectually capable of what you're talking about as far as working, like having that trust factor, the operating like other races. I don't think we're intellectually capable of doing that because we would have did it by now. We've been here for 500 years. We would have did it by now.
I think at one point we were doing that. And for me, let me just insert that with that statement. A big part for a very long time we were doing that, but a big part of public policies that was specifically implemented in our community to harm us broke that trust and created dysfunction. And it created this handout mentality, i.e. welfare, broken families, and so for a long time.
How did they do that? How did the system have that much power in one generation? Like so I
think people don't, and this is what I'm saying, people don't understand public policies, how it affects your lifestyle. So for instance, when you talk about the war on drugs, where that was intentionally put in Black communities to destroy Black communities, when you talk about public policies that were created and implemented on a local level, state level, and federal level, as far as housing, education. So yeah, public policy in a lot of ways have and continue to dictate how you live and what you are achieving. So just swinging back to the mental slavery and us versus everybody else, when you look at the Asian community, they got how many executive orders, laws passed, and public policies in their favor for economic empowerment, hate crime bill, everything that the Asian Pacific Islanders received from the federal and state in the past 12 months should have been specifically for us. But we did not demand it. We did not get it, take it. And nobody's not going to just give it to you because you go to the poll and vote. You literally have to fight for it and take it. And that is part of mental slavery, to where we don't operate on that level. Everybody else does, particularly Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, because they're getting a whole bunch of public policies specifically for them, even illegal immigrants. And we're not getting anything, but we're complaining about it.
Well, okay, let me just say this real quick. So, all right. So, the reason we don't get anything is we're not putting the money together for the lobbying groups. You know what I mean? And once again, to give that much power during all that time that you're talking about, the Jim Crow and everything, guess what? There's always been successful Black people. Even
No. Even we were strong under Jim Crow. I'm talking about,
or even whatever part of American history.
I would say from 1970 onward, that's when that distrust and dysfunction really started.
Yeah, but it has still been successful Blacks throughout all America. I'm just saying, I'm just gonna be one of them. Whatever they got public policy, if you're to the point where that affects your life on a daily basis, and you need to work your way about it. That's how.
But do you think because you're successful that you still don't suffer from mental slavery if you're a successful Black person? Because there are a lot of successful Black people who operate for self, and to me, that is mental slavery. You got a lot of handkerchiefs.
Let's stop right there, because I think
I guess I'm mental slave then, because I'm about self. I'm mental slave.
Yeah, because you guys both use the term, and then one of the questions we're going to ask next is like, how do we know? Like, what are these symptoms of? Like, how do we know if somebody is in this thing? Because there's the obvious question whenever somebody stands on some perch and says that person over there is in the matrix. When we know everyone is in the matrix, it just depends on how fluid is your program, how much understanding do you have of the matrix you're in, what kind of BSing of yourself versus others are you doing, right? So it's not, no one is out there on God mode watching everybody else, but we'll get to that. LAR, do you use the term mental slavery, and what do you mean when you say it, if you do use it? And then anything else that you may have wanted to add as you hopped on.
I don't really use it. I understand it. From what I've heard just now, and I'm sorry for being late.
CPT, that's mental slavery too.
Bam.
Ramil and LAR.
She's got the mental slavery gun.
When the white folks show up, that's mental slavery too.
This is what Game Changer accused her of. Game Changer said, look, all this mental slavery talk is what Black women use to try to control Black men.
Of course you would go to the gender thing. That's somebody that's weak-minded. Like, stop.
I would say part of our not being able to do things correctly, probably in one generation, probably comes from the crack era. So the kids and grandkids, or the adults of the crack era, their kids and grandkids in our generation, our morals got warped by the crack era, and our fiscal irresponsibility got warped by the crack era. So what people from Jim Crow to civil rights movement, a little bit past that, they were different group of people because they were more unified and trusting of each other. The crack era just made us all selfish, self-centered, egotistical, and materialistic to the point to our own detriment. So a lot, that's, we can blame that on the government to a degree, but the remnants of that is something that we just put into our quote unquote culture. Because we think, unfortunately, we think that dope boys are great businessmen when they haven't done nothing. It's just they've been seen as popular. So we look at money completely differently. So that's just my thought on that.
Ramil might say, hey, you know what? The Italians did their dope thing too. Then it doesn't stop. Well, anyways, but let me not put words in his mouth. Now, let me ask Ramil, because you and the real Dana were talking, and you got to a point where you realized, hey, I can accuse you of being in mental slavery. Oh, you can accuse me of being mental slavery. Okay, then the question is, isn't this word just like a low resolution bucket that you use rhetorically, polemically, argumentatively? In other words, in the sport of debate or in the sport of slurring someone else, or right? It's not very highly descriptive so far. So do you have some symptoms, specific ones? Because, for example, Dana is saying, the real Dana is saying, not seeing the community in the big picture is mental slavery. Well, are there real symptoms, or is this thing all hogwash?
I didn't accuse anybody of being a mental slave, but the thing is, it's subjective, and everybody has their own. Everybody has their own views of it. Like I said, to me, a mental slave is somebody who is, still believing that the matrix has their best interest at hand instead of taking control of the matrix. Let the matrix control them. You know what I'm saying? Mental slavery is not a color thing to me. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're in the rat race, to me, you're a mental slave. Everybody has their own perspective. You know, I don't. So that's what I'm at. I just think it's a
Okay, so
subjective
Why
term.
do everyone keep saying this word, the matrix? Like, what is that? What do you mean by the matrix?
let me hold on and try to see if
Okay.
because I asked the question to Ramil. Let me see if I partly understand his answer, right? And he used the word the matrix and such, but
You
basically,
believe in
Ramil,
the programming. You believe in the
basically you're saying if you are seeing, if the general organs of sense making out there, whether it be the media, the government, universities, those things, right? The big guys, right? If the things that they're telling people to do is kind of just correlated one-to-one almost with your actions, you would say, well, that's a mental slavery type person, right? So forget what you mean by the matrix and such, but if you have the government, what the government wants and what the government says, what the media line is, what the intellectual university line is, and your life is just following that program one-to-one, it's fair to say that your definition of mental slavery resembles something like that?
Well, not if you're flipping that to something else, but if you believe in that and you believe
If you
that's the end all
believe it,
be
yeah, if
all,
you're like,
that's the end all
okay.
be all, that's it to life, and you're just gonna follow the program, you know, go to school, work, and die, and you're not flipping that to anything else. You don't trying to create your own. You're trying not to. If you're just following that program, no questions asked, something that somebody else laid out for you. To me, you are mentally safe because that's not your full potential. That's something somebody else created. That's a stepping stone, in my opinion. So that's one of the.
I know. I understand, and it's a fair enough kind of definition of mental slavery. You know, it's easy to track. Basically,
you're a robot.
like,
you're a drone. You're just a drone. You're just following with the. And then you media. You believe mainstream media. You know, the matrix. It's just, you know, it's a whole. You're just with the status quo. No questions asked.
And that's why I always go back to the average person. But it's just something I keep on trying to remind us that,
well, you know, it's cool. It's cool.
that this is what almost everyone is. But you already know that, Ramil. That's why you only hang out with your small crew, right? But anyways, yeah. So the real Dana, does that kind of clarify? And then we'll get Dr. Thunder in here right now. Does that kind of clarify what this matrix thing is? Basically saying, hey,
yeah, I mean, we're all
a
part of this matrix. Anytime you use technology, there was a Netflix documentary where I forgot the name of it, but they were just talking about the matrix. There was, as far as we're the product, and you know, the algorithm and stuff. It was kind of boring, but it wasn't. It's something that people should watch. Where we are a product. Everybody is a product. Unless you just disconnect from Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, even if you have a cell phone, and you go to Google, we are the product. So the matrix to me has nothing to do with mental slavery. The matrix is just how society is set up and it's not a race thing. It's
you need to tell us real quick, because you brought us to this mental slavery thing. You give us a short list of your symptoms. Yeah.
Well, mental slavery, it's not just a Black thing. There are a lot of people who fall under the category of mental slavery. When you're talking about, like Ramil said, people just go to school, get a job, and that's it. No ambition. Like, there are a lot of people, especially young people, who are burnt out. Because they went to school and they're working for a corporation and they're overworked. They don't know what they want to do, or are they really enlightened? A lot of people don't think for themselves, as if they are mentally programmed to go with the status quo. And that's across the board.
I like that. Drone, don't think for themselves. You guys have landed on the place where we can both see and understand, and we can say, okay, cool, that is a point out there on the map. Okay, drone. Following certain data that Ramil can look at, right? You say, okay, you're following this and you're not flipping it, you believe it, you're a drone. You're saying, hey, these people are not thinking for themselves. So let's kind of have that placeholder so far for mental slavery. But Dr. Thunder, do you use the term mental slavery? Okay. And if you do, what do you mean when you say it?
I think we have to be careful not to sort of conflate people that haven't achieved their full potential with being slavery. I think it's possible that people can just decide that they don't want to necessarily do anymore. They're satisfied with whatever it is. They get to, on the weekends, they get to, go to the bar or whatever. So it's more of a personal choice about that. I think the matrix in particular refers to it's not just a matter of being willing to settle for less. It's a matter of can't even see reality for what it is, and so what you think is reality is actually not reality at all. That has to do more with what the Matrix references, and that's where that whole blue pill, red pill stuff. That's where red pill terminology comes from. Is from that movie, and that's in particular the scene in that movie. So that's what's referred to there. But yeah, I mean, people can be. One thing that's interesting, if we're sort of tracking back to when this discussion began in our last episode, when Game Changer and Dana were going back and forth about, is there such a thing as mental slavery or not? I think there is something called mental slavery. However, I would also say that the easiest way to create mental slaves is by enslaving their body and by establishing a bunch of rules and then making them think that if they just follow the rules, that everything's going to be okay. That's probably the quickest way to make a bunch of mental slaves. So that's what I think.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Thanks for bringing in the distinction there about settling for less, which may be something, which, by the way, we have terms for, such as apathy, a lack of certain pride and dignity, which are other kinds of, shall we say, psychological or cultural maladies or maladaptations that exist, that if we're trying to distinguish between general sheep-like behavior or settling for less, or this other thing, which is a programming, mind control-like, drone-like, okay, then I think that's a good distinction to make. Now, K Polymath, you came in here. You're a special guest. Typically, people have to come up, and typically, you got to be, you got to have your bona fides here. But you have a question or a comment. You're here to agree with Ramil about F this stuff. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So, what do you call it? Mental slavery or not? I don't think I want to make a distinction. Yes, I think people that don't think are slaves. I'll give you a simple example. If you look at the white intellectual sphere, they keep talking about these things. People like Jonathan Haidt, Jonathan Peterson, as well as other people. They keep mentioning things like the education system, or Peugeot. The education system and the university system, especially for these courses in humanities, are somewhat basically breeding out pseudo-communists and not telling people how to think properly. The issue here is, if a school can do that to you, you're already a slave. You should be able to see BS from reality and just be like, hang on, that doesn't make sense. I'll take it and I'll learn it as a skill.
Hold on. I like what you're saying, but let me just make sure. I think what you're saying is clear. Is clear. You're saying the table is already set. There's already the set of number of people that are going to be led. Just depends on who is playing the pipe. Right? Who's playing the music? Who's playing the music that they're dancing to? That if you can fool them, they're already fools. So it doesn't matter. It's change this particular message, change that. It's like it doesn't matter. Is that part of what you're saying?
Exactly. There's some people that are born to be slaves, and some people are born to rule. So the kinds of people who go to a university degree, study women's studies or African and Black American studies, and then they come out with these ideas, which again, they sound nice and they sound spiritual, but then when you put them under the test of logic, truth, reason, they fail and collapse. These people are slaves. They're slaves to the institutions. They're the kinds of people who would be slaves across any kind of system. So no, I don't think that we're mentally enslaved. I just think most people are, by definition, slaves. It just happens that the system right now works more in favor for people that look different from us. That's all. But we're all slaves.
I need a definition of slave.
Yeah, because I was gonna say to him, do you think Dr. Thunder is mentally enslaved? Because he is a scholar, he is a professor and at a prestige university, and he teaches music.
Right. I'm also a scholar. I'm also a PhD and all those things. But that's not what the point I made. The point is, it's not about what you do, it's what you believe. If he believes in the system, If Dr. Thunder truly thinks that all Black people have to do is follow these steps and sets of rules, then they'll be able to help themselves, then he's also mentally enslaved. But I don't think
I don't get what you're saying.
he believes that.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let me lay this down, okay? Because Mr. Polymath, you dodged. How did you dodge? Not completely. You just kind of you morphed into a mist. Okay. Now the point is this: you come in here with a hard distinction, and we liked it. We're like, okay, cool. You're saying the table is already set. Some people are kind of saying, like, we understand that. We talk about the sheep. We talk about the average people, depending if you want to put positive connotations to it, or you just want to talk about statistics and how people actually are. We are mammals. We do have patterns, right? It's not like it's not crazy. So you say that, but then you don't want to give the ways of measuring. So the real Dana said, how about Dr. Thunder? And then you failed to give the attributes, maybe quantity, because there are things you could say about Dr. Thunder when maybe if you have a conversation with him or understand his level of it's all in the insight thing. It seems to be, because if you guys have agreed, you both, Dana and Ramil, have agreed that it's about this kind of a drone-like behavior being programmed or propagandized and such, then that's what you're testing for when you listen, if you speak to Dr. Thunder. And if you've spoken to Dr. Thunder, you can know, okay, cool, that guy he's not falling for the okie doke or many okie dokes out there.
This is what I'm trying to understand, because he said if you go to school and you go to school for women's studies or whatever, and then you persuade people to that way of thinking. So he implemented the thing about schooling, and that's what I brought up the Dr. Thunder, because yes, Dr. Thunder, he is a scholar at a prestigious university. He teaches music. He is a musician. However, his agenda, and he said it's not even about being biased, but he said he's biased. His focus is Black boys and Black men. That's someone who's not mentally enslaved. Just because you are an intellect, there are some intellects you would say that could be mentally enslaved, but if you are an intellect and you are also trying to push the advancement of your people, that's not mental slavery.
Yeah. So let me just since you got this thing highlighted with my first of all, I would say Dr. Thunder obviously flipped, okay, the program. He has a brand. He's a musician. He's been in movies and music. He clearly used the defined path. He flipped it to his own benefit. So that's why I say that. But as far as this comment says, Ramil thinks enslaved people were neglectful for not engaging in capitalism. Yes, I do. There were people who bought themselves out of slavery. There was thousands of Black slave owners. There was tens of thousands of Black business owners. I know how Black people like to over dramatize some stuff. All right, I'm not saying slavery was good. I'm not endorsing it, but I just think when you read these stories and read all these successful Black people who were alive, who we never talk about for some reason during slavery and after slavery, who had their own architect firms, they were building things, they were tradesmen, they were masons, the postal service, all these type of businesses, and they own other slaves. I mean, farms, all those things we don't talk about how successful Black people were during those times. I just find that funny. So yes, during that time there were Blacks engaging in capitalism, and they were doing pretty well at it, especially in South Carolina, where there was a whole bunch of Black business owners. Yeah. So that's why I'm mad with that.
I mean, if you're not engaging in capitalism here in America, you're not going to get very far.
Let me ask something, just because what I'm getting is, and what I'm thinking about this situation is, America is mental slavery in itself because it's based on manifest destiny. So if you don't fit the caste system of manifest destiny the way people like it, even if you're mentally enslaved in your group, but if you're not mentally enslaved in your group, the other groups are going to figure you should be in a certain particular predicament. So they'll address you in that way. So it seems like a lot of people have glitches in their own mental matrix when you're meeting somebody who doesn't fit the slavery box you want them to be in, or the slavery box that they are not in.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that could be inside of the group and outside of the group. But I don't think, it seems like people can't fathom somebody being outside of the framework that they're accustomed for a group being seen in. You know, that, and because America is like an all-encompassing white nation, if you're any, you won't be able to fit into multiple boxes unless you fit under whiteness.
Yeah, sometimes LAR, like, honey, I don't be wanting to think on a philosophical level. Not saying what you're saying is like wrong, but it's like, okay, you be going deep with it.
My bad. My bad. No, only reason I said that because what K Polymath was talking about and Ramil, yeah, all y'all, but because at some point you have to figure out if you're mentally enslaved for yourself. Nobody's gonna tell you because they're gonna capitalize on you being enslaved.
But I said this last week. A lot of people don't even know that they're mentally enslaved.
Yeah, so
but
Well,
like you said,
what
just said, LAR, a lot of people want to capitalize off your mental enslavement. That is exactly what is happening now in society. When we're talking about Black people, because that was in his thing with the ADOS. I don't know why he just talking about ADOS, honey, because Black people, let's say throughout the world, particularly in Africa, they are all mentally enslaved. Because no advanced technology has came up out of Africa ever. Y'all allow people to go up in Africa, honey, and abstract all your resources. So
the internet, you know, the guy that invented the internet, and he was in Nigeria.
Yeah. One of the pioneers of
No,
internet, fiber
who
optic.
invented the internet?
Don't you guys come on, don't you guys not gonna get into that? Here's my mind. There's no point. Dana's point stands. They're mental slaves everywhere.
Or Britain to get educated.
Yeah,
I said advanced technology coming up out of Africa.
Well, okay, let me say this, and I'm
the internet started with the military. That wasn't no Nigerian man.
I'm not going to be philosophical about this. The vast majority of the world isn't living in reality because we only prop up the smartest people in our group, and we try to ignore the 90% of stupid people. So that's ultimately what keeps going on is I'm putting, and I've said this before, I'm putting my best against your worst to make me look better as a person. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So a lot of us are enslaved because every group has a superiority complex over another group, and everybody got points on the board. But nobody wants to say who's cheating.
True. Okay, I agree with you there. To your point, Black people, let's say Black people here in America, I don't think we have enough points on the board. We're not competing. And I think that's the problem. We're not competing. You have to compete. And if you're just sitting around, going to work every day, you know, just going in and out of work, going home, hanging out, partying or whatever, if you're not competing, then what are you doing?
Yeah, so Ramil is on your team. As long as Ramil's competing, doesn't matter what Ramil thinks, right? As long as, okay, Ramil, be individualistic, hang out with your crew. As long as your guys are out there killing it, go ahead.
That's a fallacy. And I'm saying it's a fallacy because in America, 92 or 94% of the wealth is in white hands. So when people say competing, we act like all these other groups are competing at this high rate in this race also, when they're not.
Yes, they are, but they're starting at.
Because if they will own more, they would use more, they will facilitate more, they will create more. They're in this country, people who are successful who are not from this country are usually, you know, in working from two countries. They're not working in this country specifically. Okay, to your point, I agree with you to a certain degree because, like I was saying earlier, I don't think you was on the show then. Public policies, Asian American Pacific Islanders, they had over a dozen public policies, laws, executive orders specifically for them within the past 12 months. And that is because their local organizations came together and demanded from the Biden administration that this is what they need, this is what they want. We didn't get that. Only thing Black people did was just go to the polling booth. I also said public policy, you have to participate in politics, and that is part of advancing. That is part of participating in capitalism. So you're right as far as white people control the majority of the wealth.
You said 94%. Huh? You said white people own 94% of the wealth in America?
Well, I don't know about that, but they own majority.
The resources,
However,
yeah.
there is a they're going to have to compete with the Asian community, so they have competition. When you look at the Asian community, they're competing. When you look at Hispanics, they're competing. When you look at illegal immigrants, they are competing. We're not competing. How are you giving refugees from Ukraine, Afghans, illegal immigrants, DACA, all this money, and we're not demanding nothing? Like, you don't.
Yeah,
You don't. That.
Yeah, I have a question. Is it possible to be lazy and not be a slave, not be a mental slave? Is it possible to be foolish, foolhardy, not be willing what's necessary to work the system in your behalf, but also not be a mental slave?
No, because
Is that
part of
something
mental
that's
slavery.
possible?
That's part of mental slavery.
Yeah, see that okay, so then that's why I wanted a definition of what a slave is, because in my mind, mental slavery is about the inability to recognize reality for what it is in some respect, and because you don't recognize reality for what it is, you're being manipulated by reality. Other people that understand reality are easily able to manipulate you. But
Yeah.
if you are manipulated because you're just lazy,
Yeah.
and you actually are aware of what's going on, you know
Yeah,
that
it
you
could just
can
be
contact your representative. You know that you can do X, Y, and Z. You know that you can caucus with other groups, to get certain things happening. You know that you can do those things, but you don't do it because you're lazy.
That's
Or you
you're
don't do
mentally enslaved.
Well, hold on.
I know I could be a mom. I know I could be a better parent. I know I need to do this to, provide for my kids a little bit better, but I just don't feel like doing it.
No, but
Okay,
see, that's not mental slavery. That's just lazy. That's just lazy.
Is it altogether mental slavery? The definition is subjective, so it's kind of hard to say.
Okay, so wait, hold on a second. The real Dana, it's not like it didn't happen. A few minutes ago, what happened is that you and Ramil touched on the same point of what mental slavery is, and you're trying to expand it now, Dana. Basically, it is all about whether or not you're a drone, whether you're a slave, whether you don't see what's going on, right? You're blind.
I'm not saying
right?
that's all. I'm saying that's part of it. It's not just one.
Also,
component.
apathy and laziness and certain kind of ignorance, and not just getting moving.
If you are not competing, if you are not advancing yourself, if you're not working on yourself internally, whether it's because you're lazy, why are you lazy to where you don't want nothing better for you or your children? So if you are not canvassing where you live at, but you want to complain about what America's given to all these other different groups,
but
you want
we have to be careful though. Hold. I got to jump in. We got to be careful though, because isn't it the elitist perspective that thinks that it knows what's best for us? No, we ought to be doing this. We ought to be doing that.
Give me an example.
And so what if somebody knows better, but they just decide they just want to sit on their butt?
Well, the elitist, that's usually someone that's born into it.
No.
So what do you mean?
The perspective. No. I'm talking about the perspective. So an issue that I have with white liberals, for instance, okay, as white liberals, they think that they know what's better for black people than black people know what's good for them. Right.
Yeah, the real Dana, you're being an elitist, you're being a white liberal, you're saying, hey, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. You know what's better, and you're telling people otherwise. If you don't get up at 5 a.m., you're a mental slave. And if you're not working 16 hours a week, you're a mental slave.
That's not being an elitist.
It is. You're dictating from on high certain standards.
You know what the difference? No.
There are many ways in which you can use the term elitist, and you can use it in this way as well.
For the record, I'm not calling anybody an elitist. All I'm saying is that's the same thought process. It's if I know a better way to do something, I mean, yeah, I can present the information, but I can't also be like in the position of if they don't do this, I mean,
I got you.
I can't be in the position of thinking that I know better for them than they know for themselves. That's what I'm saying. And so if we are defining mental slavery as basically people are not capitalizing on the system, they're not doing all the things necessary to make themselves quote unquote better, to advance. Well, whose idea of advance? Some people, maybe their idea of a good life is just to work their 40 hours and go to the bar on the weekend and spend time with family and friends, for vacations, and that's totally successful for them. I'm not saying that that's all that would be possible for them, but who am I to tell them that they're a mental slave because they just don't want the things that I want? That's all I'm saying. It's a fine point, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. You're saying, be careful of paternalism, and I think it's a fair point. Like whenever you're out there, being a legislator of the philosophical kind, you got to be careful of the paternalistic aspect. But I think let me get Ramil.
I think I have the definition of elitist totally incorrect.
I gotta.
An elitist is someone who believes that society or system should be led by the elite.
Hold on a second. Let's not act as though elite athlete, elite X, elite Y. Elite just means above. Let's not pretend.
No. An elitist.
We can't use words in different ways.
An elitist.
And you can be an elitist in many ways, depending on if I define it or not.
An elitist.
No. You can't say that. You can't just say, "Oh, it's only in the political sense."
The definition of elitist is a person that believes that a system or society should be controlled by the elite.
That's BS. That's the political
context.
I wish I
was at home.
And I'm not saying that. I also said earlier in the show, wait a minute, because you came in later, Dr. Dunda. I also said that there are a lot of Black elitists that are mentally enslaved as well, because you are doing it for self and not the advancement of your people. So no, I'm not an elitist. I know I don't think that that people should be led by the elitists. No.
Yeah. So just again, one final time. I'm not calling you elitist. I don't think anyone's calling you an elitist. The point is, and it's a fine point, it's that there is a thought process that that elitists use that a lot of people use frequently. I mean, all of us could fall victim to that same sort of thought process. And that's why I still wanted a definition, a more coherent definition of mental slavery, because it seems as though the definition that we're using is sort of stretching in order to accommodate anything that we throw at it. We say, oh yeah, well, and this too, and this too, and this other thing also, and this other thing. And those things, I'm not arguing against those things. Black folks should be doing what's best for them. They should be working the system. They should be doing all those things. I just don't know that it means that they're a mental slave if they're not doing those things. It could just mean that they just don't want it. They don't want it enough. Maybe they're lazy. Maybe they know better, but they're just lazy. Maybe they have a vice. Maybe they're hooked on drugs or something.
So you asking a question, or you saying maybe? But
yeah,
maybe we just don't. Maybe we just.
Well, here I have to go. I've got to go. But I'm thanks for letting me jump in. Well, I guess I get to jump in. It's my show, our show. But I do have to get going. Thank you for entertaining.
Where you want to go?
I've got to drive. I've got about 4.5 hours to drive, and I got to pick my son up right now.
Okay.
So I'll see you all later, and I'll see you next week.
Music.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Dana with the data. All right, I'll see y'all later.
All right, cool. Now, shout out to Man of Tomorrow. He has got the super chat here. He's basically talking to, hey, you don't have specific investment in specific movements or organizations. You don't get the specific outcomes, no particular inputs, no particular outputs. Thank you very much for the $10. And maybe next week, Dana, we'll talk about elitists.
I don't know about next week because next week Formula One season starts, so I'll be doing my show later in the day. But send me an email and I'll keep you posted.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. K Polymath, and then LAR and Ramil, because Ramil, it seemed like there were several points you wanted to jump in, and then you got cut off because someone was going at it. But were there any thoughts that you wanted to before we go to K Polymath here?
Oh no, I was just saying that that mental slavery is subjective, so it's hard to determine what it is. That's how I'm thinking. Everybody has their own little definitions of what they determine a mental slave is. Like, I mean, I just think it's subjective.
Okay. Now, let's say it's subjective, but we still got to communicate, because if it's completely subjective, then there's no need. Then it's useless.
Well, it's not. I think it, because some things are very objective. Some things can be a little bit, but from what I'm seeing, everybody has a different. Because we're trying to come to a consensus of what is a mental slave, but if everybody has their own different opinions of it, there would never be a total agreement. Because that's very vague when you really think about it. Somebody can say, somebody who watch basketball, he's a mental slave. He watched the NBA. You know what I mean? He pays attention to sports. He's a mental slave. You know what I mean? Like, it can go a lot of different rabbit holes when you want to. You know what I mean? But I don't know. But if you want to try maybe some common ground. Maybe some common ground there. Or...
No. I think we found common ground between you and Dana. And then what I want to ask Dana right now, and then and then LAR, please, jump in, is that addition in terms of, because you took it to a behavioral place, in terms of, like, if you don't make that move, right, Dana? If you don't actually go out there and do that thing which you should do, you give examples such as, I'm not a good, I know I could be a better parent, this, that, those kinds of things, right? That we may call apathy or laziness, as Dr. Thunder has said it, right? Now, how does that actually work? Like, can I sin a little bit, or do I have to be like Jesus Christ here in terms of how if I'm not Jesus or Buddha, now obviously I'm being tongue in cheek there, but just so we can kind of see how much do you mean when you start bringing these behaviors into it, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, like Dr. Dunder was saying, does being lazy fall under the confines of mental and slavery? And I would say yes, when I gave the example about as far as being a parent. The most important education for a child is K through 12, not college. And as a parent, are you preparing your children at a young age? That's very important. Are you investing in your children's education for K through 12? Because that's going to determine a lot of times their trajectory throughout life. And specifically talking about Black Americans, as a general standpoint, I don't see enough of that today. There was a time where we had a strong emphasis on education, and now you just don't see it. And so, if are parents lazy? Yes. Particularly when we talk about Black parents, do you go to the PTA? Do you sit with your child after school and have a second school for your children? Especially on the weekends, extracurricular activities. Are you paying for a tutor? Whether it's for learning about anything on STEM, and this is from K through 12. But I don't see that. I see that you make sure that your kids are fly. I had a couple people calling on my show who worked in the school system throughout the United States, and they will concur that Black people are least involved in their children's education. That is because you are lazy. So lazy to me falls under mental slavery. And I also want to say this because when Ramil said it's subjective, true, but it could also be objective. Mental slavery was a term developed by Marcus Garvey. And he actually coined the term mental slavery in a speech in 1932. Right. So that he was saying that we should emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. And I personally need to do more research on Marcus Garvey, but his objective was to move the Black race forward in every aspect in society. So that term, that mental slavery was coined by Marcus Garvey. But
okay, so K Polymath, tell us something about about the slavery, mental or otherwise, in Africa right now, or mental slavery, or certain kinds of cultural dysfunction, maladies, and such? Because I understand that you mentioned, that basically the chessboard is such that you have a certain number of people that are going to go anyways, but the programming is different from place to place. So, what are some of the unique African programs and unique African drones going on over there?
Yeah, good question. So let me start by saying that with mental slavery, from a typical perspective, is that yes, laziness. Okay, so Dana is talking from a macro level perspective, meaning looking at group level identification. So she's looking at advancing the Black community. So yes, I agree with her in her definition. If you're lazy, you're a mental slave based on a macromolecular level. However, Dr. Thando is talking about it from a micro level perspective, meaning from the individual perspective. So the individual might not be a mental slave, but the culture and environment might be in such a way that if you compare it to other cultures, those people are more mentally enslaved. So if you are to listen to liberals telling you that, hey, racism is your biggest problem, instead of actually going out there and doing things, you're a mental slave, for example. Doesn't mean that racism isn't a problem. Of course it is. It's a massive problem. But the point is, if it pervades your movement potential, you have become a slave. And laziness is just a behavioral trait. And let's juxtapose this to actual slave. An actual slave is a person that's put in, without his or her consent, in a position of slavery. A prisoner is a slave, right? A prisoner does not want to be in prison, and a prisoner has been forced to be in that prison. That's a slave. Now, there is an aspect there. The prisoner could escape, could try to better his learn about mathematics, programming, whatever it is, languages, to advance himself when he leaves, but most don't. So again, there's a physical aspect. If you relate that to the mental aspect, you can see that there's something similar. So I agree with Dana when it comes to, if you're not doing something that should better your life, and you understand that you want a better life, you are a mental slave. But again, that's from the macro level perspective. Micro level, I'm going to be a little bit more lenient. And then if you come to Africa, it seems like you want to say something quick.
No, go ahead. And just to say something real quick about, obviously you can get very micro, it doesn't matter anymore, where, it's like somebody can say, hey, God was a mental slave on the seventh day. Why wasn't he at it? Right. So obviously their levels of taking this ridiculous, right? And
right, of course.
And the fine point of like, okay, I'm not a mental slave, but how do I deal with my laziness or my particular weakness? I made a stream yesterday, talked about, knowing your weak points. You don't fail in 1,000 different ways. It's probably like 2 or 3 ways which you fail. And I said like a bookshelf, okay, where it's going to be the screws going into the studs, because the bracket is rigid enough, the plywood is rigid enough. That's how that bookshelf is going to feel all the time. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, continue with the Africa stuff. How's mental slave going on in Africa? And then we'll have LAR jump in.
Yeah, so in Africa, an example of a mental slave here is that people think if you are from abroad, you are going to be rich automatically. If you're white, you're even seen as rich automatically. They don't care about the factors of who you are as an individual. So that's an example. They judge and they make certain judgments based on race and passport affiliations. That's an example. So it means that a person could be a local, they could be very well educated, and they could have the money, but because they don't have those internationally perceived advantages, they're going to be kind of not seen as someone who they can value from. That's a simple example. Another example is in Africa, it seems, because again, this is now the difference in culture. People here, they don't understand the concept of time. We've all heard of black man's timing, but in Africa, it's worse. African timing is like 2 days before black man timing, right, in the West. The thing here is people here are mentally enslaved because they don't understand their potential. They're just stuck in the system. They keep voting, even though they know that the voting doesn't do anything. I know it's the same in America and other places, but here it really is stuck. The government will do something literally 2 months before the elections, building roads and putting new systems in schools and creating jobs for the youth and removing taxations on, for example, the border borders. That's like the motorbike guys, right? That's what they do before the elections. For example, in here, the elections are in August. So now they remove taxes for YouTube content creators and, online businesses. They do that just before elections. People vote. Then in the 4 years within the elections, the government doesn't do anything, but they still vote and they still keep talking about it as if it actually matters. It's baffling to me. I can't understand it.
All right, LAR. Any other, anything that you've wanted to add? Because a lot has been said. Okay, a lot has been said, and one of the last things that you did say was foundationally about a country, for example, and this is true of any people, because earlier I talked about the trust within a group, right? And it's based on all kinds of stories, myths, truths, realities, blah blah blah, and blood or whatever it is that makes that family and that trust that we were talking about, Dana and Ramil, that makes it such that people are going to transact with each other, right, and get certain things happening. And it's not doesn't even really have to be concerted, but if that culture is there with that trust, right? And then you were talking about the fact that, hey, if you're not part of that tent, then it's all the program is all slavery for you. But I just wanted to say that. But you can go ahead and add whatever else you wanted to add.
I think that really our mental slavery is steeped in confusion and part of being subjective. Because if you're mentally enslaved, somebody's enslaving you mentally also. They're clear and they have clarity about what they're doing. You're the one that's confused. So what works for them doesn't work for you. That's like when Dr. Thunder was talking about the paternalism of white liberals. The confusion comes in when a white liberal can tell you to do something and you're looking at them like, yeah, you're white, that'll work for you, but it wouldn't work for me. So the more subjective we become, the more we get immersed in slavery, because we haven't made a clear decision to go in any direction, because we're going all over the place, because every move we've made, there's been an obstacle. Not understanding that everybody's going to have an obstacle. It's just our obstacles come from outside influences. So I think our biggest problem is not picking a direction and just going and dealing with the obstacles as they come, because people have enslaved us in the sense of they've already set it up. So I want you to be this for me, and I'm going to make sure you're this for me by doing these things that work for me. And if you do them, and I'm going to crush them working for you. So you're going to get confused to the point where you're going everywhere trying to figure it out. Because it made me think of the civil rights thing when Martin Luther King was, I brought my people into a burning house. People during the civil rights movement didn't understand how actually the game worked, because they were confused about, okay, if we do this, and this, we'll be seen as this, and this. And that wasn't true. So that's my thought on that.
Here's something. Okay, Ramil mentioned something about the fact that, okay, people are going to mentally slave, but they're going to they might be good employees, right? So why am I not out there as a business person, just hiring these mentally enslaved people that are not achieving their full potential, and then getting them to work for me? So a lot of the things that you may be saying, LAR, then would not possibly matter, right? But Ramil, are you actually finding these people? If they're mentally enslaved, can they actually do the work, or they're 100% useless, right? Is this working out for you in that particular regard, or what have you experienced out there with regards to engaging the sheep?
I mean, that's they're a labor class. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's easy. I mean, you being mentally enslaved doesn't affect your ability to perform. Based on my definition, see, that's what I see it. So there's plenty of people out here. Yeah, that's just not a problem. The more mentally enslaved you are, probably the better. Shoot, for that purpose.
Okay.
I don't need you thinking. You're not paid to think. You're not paid to be a critical thinker.
Okay. Let me zoom out again, and I'm going to start with LAR, and then we can go in a rotation around this here. And I don't know how long we've been, but we're probably needing to land the plane soon, right? As far as the external things, okay? Because I think one way to help define, right, is to say, well, is it external, is it internal, is it a combination of both? I think both you, Ramil, and the real Dana said, it's probably internal, and it's kind of like a self-imposed thing. It's kind of something that you kind of do to yourself, But we never kind of talked about whether or not there is a concerted effort out there, okay, that targets particular groups. Because again, you're saying that we're looking for mental slavery to mean anything. We have to see like real evidence of it out there, and we can say, okay, this group was targeted by mental slavery, or somehow it's susceptible to mental slavery, and it is particularly doing certain kinds of behavior. It can't just be like general human sheep-like behavior, right? Because that's going to be equal amongst all groups. Now, the question is this: what are the external things that are out there in media or in academia or in the government that is actually actively keeping certain people mentally enslaved? Or is it an old set it and forget it thing? Like it was set and forgotten like 100 years ago. So it doesn't really matter. It's on autopilot now. The mental slavery machine producing mental slaves everywhere is just on autopilot. Let's start with Ramil, the real Dana, K Polymath, and then Ramil. I'm sorry, Ramil, LAR, K Polymath, real Dana.
Yeah, there's no autopilot. It's internal. I'm sticking with that. There is no external force. There's nothing on autopilot. Some people are gonna rise to the top. Some people are not. And that's just the reality of life. That's nature. And I think I believe the sooner somebody accepts that, the more pragmatic they're gonna move, and they're gonna know how to maneuver better. Because understanding that it is what it is, not gonna change it. There's no rising up of the people or anything. Everybody's in the situation they're in because of a sort of organizing. That's just where they fall. That's where the chips fall.
So the chips fall. That's where that's how the gravel and the sand and the rocks lay themselves out. Water gonna find its level. Okay, now we got LAR. What are the external things out there? You mentioned America and that tent and its founding and its basic principles, and how does it work? LAR.
Let me use it in an educational sense. We approach education like it's fair, and it's not. We act as though kids go to school, and teachers teach the kids that they like or that look like them, or more lenient on those kids, or help those kids more, or give those kids extra points to pass classes on a regular basis. We act like that's not part of the equation, but it is. And just like kids of certain groups, say our group, have a propensity, especially the boys, to quit faster when it comes to education. But we say, okay, we know they're getting picked on from kindergarten all the way up to senior year, but that's not supposed to affect them, while other groups aren't getting the same type of treatment in the classroom. And I know this because I have a bunch of educators in my family, and they'll tell you, white people allow white people to do things that facilitate their children being, honor roll students, even if it's bending or breaking the rules. They don't, but same thing with Asians, same thing with even us as Black people. But when you mix the classrooms, or same thing with Hispanics, but when you mix the classrooms and the teachers, you're going to get that I want my group to win. So, yeah, I gave the kid in my group a 85. I gave you a 72, even though they have the same answers. So that's where it's built into the system. So that's where it's at for me.
Good. So that's where it's built into the system. I'm seeing that we're already reaching an hour and a half. So K Polymath, the external factors, right? What does it look like? You can talk about Africa or the United America, or you can give a more meta description of it in terms of, or is it all just internal? It's all just this crazy spiritual warfare.
Yeah, so it's mostly internal, and the only moments where external influences take a large seat is when it's overwhelming. A simple example is being set up for a crime that you have not committed, and then being offered a deal by the prosecutors to take that will then negatively put your people at stake. You see, that's when now you have the so-called environmental factors coming into place. But it's mostly internal. The external is really when it now puts you against your own internal well-being and your own spirit versus, let's say, losing, let's say, integrity or something, and that will put your people at a negative position. So you have to kind of think, okay, what do I value more? My own self-existence in a free way to move in this world. So to lose physical freedom and ability to navigate the world without too much perturbation, or am I valuing more of my people's ability to move forward without perturbation? That's when the environment comes in.
Got it. Okay, cool. We're gonna let Game Changer give his take, and then we're gonna have last words. But first of all, the real Dana.
What
External.
was the
Yeah.
overall?
That's what I was. Yeah. I got you. The real Dana. The question, right? You know the question.
No, can you repeat it? Is it something you said?
The external factors that are
external factors that affect mental slavery, or
yeah. Let's say that there's a concerted effort to keep certain groups enslaved mentally because it helps certain other groups or whatever. Whom are the people? Like, what mechanisms do they have in education, in academia, in the media? Blah blah blah. How does it work? LER talked about actual people, actual teachers, and systematic bullying. Blah blah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so external, you look at your environment where you live at. It's by coincidence, but sometimes it's not, to why we have a Black community, why Black people live amongst each other, and then you have suburbia where it's majority white. That was created by design. I would never, and I cannot distinguish the two as far as public policies and mental slavery. But externally, if you look at your environment where you live at, it's not safe, it's not clean. You have environmental, the air that you're breathing in, that's causing health issues. I feel as though a lot of people suffer from mental health issues. Part of that, going back to the Reagan administration, where he completely decimated funding for mental health and let out all these crazy people who just come back out into the community, particularly the Black community. So when you look at your external environment and where you live at and the education compared to other environments, suburbia or any other communities and neighborhoods, there are less money invested in that school system, high unemployment, high crime. So your internal does affect the mental slavery because of your behavior. What caused all of these disenfranchisements where you live at, and also what are you doing or not doing to change that? So it externally, you have to look at where you live at and compare that to the town over. And you see the difference. Then you ask yourself, why? Then you ask yourself, well, what are we doing here to make a difference and to make it better? To change, to enlighten, to push forward, to be more competitive. What is it that we have to do? Are people organizing to change their community for the better? Because your internal does affect your outcome in society to a certain degree. Because if you live around a whole bunch of people, whether they sell drugs, do a crime, or on welfare, just that poverty mindset, then what is your outcome in life going to look like? There was a study that I did. They said that Black people, particularly Black men and boys, if you are born into poverty, it's an 80% chance that you're going to stay in poverty throughout your adult life. So there's only that 20% that's born into poverty that will escape it. So why is that 80% still staying in poverty when they become an adult? And it has to do with, yes, your environment at home and your environment externally out in the community.
Okay, well put. Game Changer, you're part of why we're here. Okay, towards the end of last week's show, talking about suits, Black male image, reputation, and all that kind of stuff. You and Dana started going at it about this whole mental slavery thing. Is it a term that you use, Game Changer? What does it mean if you use it? What are your thoughts? What you got to say?
No, I don't really use the term, but as I understand the definition as it's being used today, it's really more of a group of people trying to influence another group of people. And mental slavery, I guess, would be a mental slave would be the one that's being influenced. I don't really think that it's a severe enough problem, and I think that the word slavery is really used as a trigger word to either deflect from something else or in order to galvanize people under the same umbrella who probably wouldn't want to be there. But that's my take on it. As far as its existence, the cultural influence that others have on our culture, particularly Black culture or even African culture, yes, it does exist. Everything you do, every type of entertainment has some type of sponsored content, whether they're trying to sponsor your culture in a different way or they're trying to try to get you to change your spending habits into a certain actions. For example, the G.I. Joe cartoon was sponsored content. They wanted young men and boys to join the military, and they sensationalized it through that cartoon. So, or, He-Man was designed to get people to buy action figures. It was made by the action figure people. So, and pretty much any commercial, any movie, pretty much everything you consume for entertainment is to get you to change your way of thinking in one way or another. Is it bad? Yes, it is. Is it slavery? No, it is not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's just have closing thoughts real quick, Ramil. Any final statements on this? Any final overtures? Okay, you want to restate your position here? The community is done. The time has proven there's no saving nothing. Even if there was saving, you wouldn't give a damn anyways. Anyways, go ahead. Final thoughts, Ramil, and then the real Dana. And then if you want to say anything else, Game Changer.
Yeah, so I'm just I look at it as mental slavery is a subjective term, and I don't care about the community.
Sweet. The real Dana, what you got for us? You're muted.
So I'm sorry. Say it with your chest, honey. Put yourself on camera.
No need. Y'all hear me? I don't
Why
care.
can't you? You was on camera this whole show. Come back on camera.
I'm smoking a joint.
Oh, yeah, I do.
You couldn't wait.
You know what's up when Ramil
You
goes.
couldn't wait 10 minutes. You couldn't wait 10 minutes.
No, I cannot. No. Sure can't. Sure cannot.
What you say? Don't What you say? You don't care about the community. See, that's that for self attitude. See, you part of the Black, them handkerchief Negroes that only look out for self.
There's literally no point. Yeah. So appreciate you having me. I'm a
Pump and dump these hoes. Oh, I can't stand that song.
Yeah, you know that. Come on, man. That's why it's in your head right now. You know it's catchy. Come on, you gonna play it on the stream.
Yeah, that's why I get on my nerves because it's catchy. But oh my god, I get on my nerves.
I don't know, man. I got a place in your head forever. That's what's up. All right, but I'm let me get out of here, man. I'll holler at y'all. Holler at you. Appreciate you.
All right, man.
All right, appreciate it.
All right, the real Dana.
That Game Changer gonna have his last comments, honey. Because if me and you started the show and everybody else was late, so let Game Changer have his last word.
Go ahead, Game Changer.
This CPT time, that's part of mental slavery too.
All right. Game Changer, any final words on this, right? Because we tried to say, hey, there's sheep-like behavior out there. You gave all kinds of examples of how things try to influence you, whether it be advertising or the education system or the church or the state, whatever it may be, right? And then you see certain dysfunctions in certain aspects of society or certain groups in society, and you say, okay, well, it's because of this thing. But what about laziness and ignorance and all these other things? So we try to distinguish all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, it seems like it doesn't really tell us what to do about mental slavery, does it? I mean, or about the issues that you are trying to change on the ground, perhaps. Your final words, Game Changer, and then Real Dana.
Well, I mean, because nothing's really changed since then, my final words won't be much different than my current words. I do think that mental slavery is really just a name to people trying to influence other people. It's meant to, once again, galvanize people under the same umbrella. Listen, um, let's just take Black people, for example, in this country. Um, there was a time when, okay, I think that a lot of Black women in this case understand that if you take away all of the we're all one people, the struggle, we're all in it together, we have to take down Whitey, we have to take down some invisible foe. If you take away that, and then the men start to evaluate the women in the same way that men evaluate men of other groups who don't have this sense of ethnocentrism. Once you take that away, and then the men start to evaluate women, we will find that so many of them are so subpar that it will leave them unmanned. So in order to distract from that, they'll say, you know, oh, we want to bring back the struggles of the past. We want to bring back the struggles of 1865 and 1965. We want to say, okay, you're not a physical slave, but you are a mental slave, and therefore you need us in this de facto imaginary civil rights movement. We're valuable to you as a companion in your struggle against the machine. However, we're not really much valuable to you as a woman is to a man who is not struggling. We're not as valuable to you, say, in the cooking, cleaning, staying in shape, child rearing arena, and, you know, being a proper mate at a proper age. We're not valuable to you in any of the ways that people who are not struggling are valuable to you. Now, here's the ironic thing. By trying to instill the concept of mental slavery into individuals, what they're attempting to do is they're trying to influence you, which is the same thing that they are accusing outside sources or different sources than them of doing to you. So it's really a different type of mental slavery, and using their words, and they would be the masters in this case.
Mm-hmm. Okay, game changer. A nice elucidation of your thesis there on that, and we'll leave it at that. Just like you guys ended the last show. But so the real Dana, what are your final thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I was about to suggest, can you drop him so it could just be me and you on the screen, honey? Because we were here on time. It is very important to be on time. Malcolm X was never late. He was always 15 minutes before the time he was supposed to be anywhere, honey. But anyway, I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. First of all, I want to say I just saw a video this morning, Vice, and it was about seafood and slavery. So every time you eat seafood, just keep in mind that the people who are out there catching the seafood are slaves, you know, which is very true. So slavery, the physical aspect of slavery, is still going on today in the world. But everybody can't be saved. Everybody cannot be saved. And me personally, I want to help advance Black people, you know, but I only want to deal with people who want to help themselves, because if you're not willing to want something different, you know, that's going to take networking, organizing, you know, canvassing, understanding politics. So if you're not willing to want to change, want to advance individually and outwardly for your community, and it could be a mixed community, and especially for your race, you know, that is a problem. So everybody cannot be saved, and I understand that. But we do have to start making changes and unbreak our minds of remove the chains from our brains of mental slavery. So yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Just every week now going forward, just send me an email the day before, because now that Formula One season is starting, my
Surprising you watch Formula One.
I love Formula One. I love Lewis Hamilton. He is going to win that 8th championship this year because he was robbed last year of it, honey. Yes.
That's a symptom of mental slavery. That's that white stuff. Anyways.
No, it's not.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And thank you for the super chatters. Okay. Or thank you to the super chatters, those of you who participated in the chat. And thank you to Game Changer and K Polymath amongst the guests over here. And of course, the real Dana, Dr. Thunder, Ramil, LAR holding it down, having a great conversation as usual. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. And when is that next time? I'm going to be here again on Tuesday with Dr. Thunder, getting ish done. Until then, peace.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil's lurking, with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.